Hello and welcome to the third episode of Fundamental of Creativity in Arts. I am Bhuvi Kengar and our subject expert is Mr. Ashish Garg. In second episode, we learnt about the fundamental of creativity in art, value and tools of art. I hope you all are remembering those terms. In this episode, we'll be learning about the following topics: illustration, graphs. Let's start understanding about the illustration. An illustration is a displayed visualization form presented as a drawing, painting, photograph, or other work of art that is created to elucidate or dictate sensual information, such as a story, poem, or newspaper article, by providing a visual representation graphically. Early history. In the early time, the illustrations were prehistoric cave paintings. Before the invention of the printing press, books, such as medieval illuminated manuscripts, were hand illustrated. Illustration has been used in China and Japan since the 8th century, traditionally by creating woodcuts to accompany writing. 15th century through 18th century, at the time of 15th century, books illustrated with woodcut illustrations became available and very popular. The main processes used for reproduction of illustrations during the 16th and 17th centuries were engraving and etching. Even engraving is very popular today itself. At the end of the 18th century, lithography allowed even better illustrations to be reproduced. The most notable illustrator of this epoch was William Blake, who rendered his illustrations in the medium of relief etching. Early to mid 19th century. In the early and mid of 19th century, there were some great illustrators like John Leech, George Cruikshank, Dickens illustrator Hablot Knight Brown, and in France, Honor Daumer. The same illustrators contributed to satirical and straight fiction magazines, but in both cases, the demand was for character drawing that encapsulated or caricatured social types and classes. The British humorous magazine Punch, which was founded in 1841, riding on the earlier success of Cruikshank's comic almanac 1827 to 1840, employed an uninterrupted run of high-quality comic illustrators, including Sir John Tenniel, the Dalziel brothers, and Georges du Maurier into the 20th century. It chronicles the gradual shift in popular illustration from reliance on caricature to sophisticated topical observations. These artists all trained as conventional fine artists but achieved their reputations primarily as illustrators. Punch and similar magazines such as the Parisian Le Voleur realized that good illustrations sold as many copies as written content. Walter Retterman, Oil on Canvas, 1927. Woman at a Piano in Elegant Interior. Illustration for Good Housekeeping magazine. Golden Age of Illustration. The American Golden Age of Illustration lasted from the 1880s until shortly after World War I. Although the active career of several later Golden Age illustrators went on for another few decades, as in Europe, a few decades earlier, newspapers, mass market magazines, and illustrated books had become the dominant media of public consumption. Improvements in printing technology freed illustrators to experiment with color and new rendering techniques. A small group of illustrators in this time became rich and famous. The imagery they created was a portrait of American aspirations of the time. Technical illustration. Technical illustration is the use of illustration to visually communicate information of a technical nature. Technical illustrations can be component technical drawings or diagrams. Technical illustration in general aim to generate expressive images that effectively convey certain information via the visual channel to the human observer. Many illustration programs are used to create technical illustrations due to the need for detailed imaging and repeated updating. Besides the commonplace 2D Adobe Illustrator, there are many 3D computer graphics software like 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, Lightwave 3D, etc. that are often utilized to create illustration for textbooks, especially scientific ones.
Learn the fundamentals of actual drawing and don't rely only on software. Even if it seems totally unnecessary, mastering basic drawing skill will always make you a better digital artist, even when you are using 3D softwares. In addition, practicing any type of hand-drawn fine art like painting, sketching, or illustration will help train your eyes and brain in relying to look at things, studying the way the light affects a surface or a shape, and understanding perspective planes interacting with each other.
Technical illustration generally have to describe and explain the subjects to a non-technical audience. Therefore, the visual image should be accurate in terms of dimensions and proportions and should provide an overall impression of what an object is or does to enhance the viewer's interest and understanding.
Technically, illustration is a method of visually explaining the complex and mechanical operation of an object. Now, that object can be a product, a car, or a washing machine. In an easily understood format, the basic objective is to provide the layperson a view into a mechanical inner working of a subject. There is not much room for spontaneity in technical art. Unlike other forms of commercial art, technical illustration is least interpretive and most straightforward type of illustration. With technical illustration, once you have decided on an angle of view, you either draw it correctly or not.
Illustration art. Today, there is a growing interest in collecting and admiring original artwork that was used as illustrations in books, magazines, posters, blogs, etc. Various museum exhibitions, magazines, and art galleries have devoted a space to the illustrators of the past. In the visual art world, illustrators have sometimes been considered less important in comparison with fine artists and graphic designers. The term illustrative sometimes being used as a negative critic, but possibly in part due to the growth of computer game and graphic novel industries, as well as a recent swing in value towards illustration in magazines and other publications over photography, illustration is becoming a valued, popular, and profitable art form that can acquire a wider market than the other two, such as in Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and USA. Original illustration art from the best known magazine illustrators is known to bring prices into the hundreds of thousands of US dollars at auction. Norman Rockwell's work transcends even these high standards, with his painting Breaking Home Ties selling in a 2006 Sotheby's auction for US dollar 15.4 million. The best known pin-up artists such as Gil Elfgren and Alberto Vargas also bring tremendous prices at auction, with a number of Elfgren's works having sold for over US dollars 100,000 in heritage auctions. There are lots of freelance work in market and huge number of people who are mad for illustrated work. Usually, they buy the illustrated work to decorate their places and are ready to pay a big fat amount for that. Let's talk about some of the type of illustrations. Types of illustration. Digolo and Mesrui subcategorize the illustration art into the four techniques: drawing, painting, printing, and pasting. These techniques affect the art in various ways, being chosen for the different impact the chosen medium produces. The choice can be based on the requirements of the illustration, constraints of the artist, cost, or other factors. As the paper gets discovered, it has pushed its boundaries even further. Traditional illustration has been developed and comprises of different approaches. It focused on reproducible ways of creating illustration and can be classified into different types. Engraving. Whenever we used to go to caves or some temples like Khajuraho, we get a chance to see the amazing paintings on the wall or stones. That is actually called engraving. Engraving is the practice of incising a design onto a hard, usually flat surface by cutting grooves into it. The result may be a decorated object in itself, as when silver, gold, steel, or glass are engraved, or may provide an intaglio printing plate of copper or another metal for printing images on paper as prints or illustrations. These images are also called engravings. Traditional engraving by burring or with the use of machines continues to be practiced by goldsmiths, glass engravers, gunsmiths, and others, while modern industrial techniques such as photo engraving and laser engraving have many important applications. Engraved gems were an important art in the ancient world, revived at the Renaissance. Although the term traditionally covers relief as well as intaglio carvings and is essentially a branch of sculpture rather than engraving, as drills were the usual tools. Etching. It is a process of using strong acid or mordant to cut into the unprotected parts of a metal surface to create a design in intaglio in the metal. The original process in modern manufacturing, other chemicals may be used on other types of material. As an intaglio method of printmaking, it is, along with engraving, the most important technique for old master prints and remains widely used today. Intaglio. Intaglio is another type of printmaking, derives from the Italian tagliare to cut, preceded by in. It refers to a number of techniques in art applied to many different materials, which all have in common that the image is created by cutting, carving, or engraving into a flat surface, as opposed to a relief where the image is what is left when the background has been cut away to leave the image apparently lifted up above the background. The term may also refer to objects made using these techniques. Linocut. It is a printmaking technique, a variant of woodcut in which a sheet of linoleum, sometimes mounted on a wooden block, is used for the relief surface. A design is cut into the linoleum surface with a sharp knife, V-shaped chisel, or gouge, with the raised uncarved areas representing a reversal mirror image of the parts to show printed. In this process, the linoleum sheet is inked with a roller called a brayer and then impressed onto paper or fabric. The actual printing can be done by hand or with a press. Sumi-e. Ink and wash painting is an East Asian type of brush painting, also known as wash painting, or by its Japanese name Sui Bokuga or Sumi-e. Ink and wash painting is also known by its Chinese name Shui Mohua, Korean Sumukwa, Vietnamese. Only black ink, the same as used in East Asian calligraphy, is used in various concentrations. Woodcut. As the name of this technique is giving an idea that in this technique artists use to work on a block of wood. It is a variety of woodcut and so a relief printing technique, where ink is applied to the face of the block and printed by using relatively low pressure. A normal engraving like an etching has a metal plate as a matrix and is printed by the intaglio method. In wood engraving, the technique for working the block is different from woodcut, using an engraver's burin to create very thin delicate lines and often having large dark areas in the composition, though by no means always. It traditionally utilizes the end grain of wood as a medium for engraving, while in the older technique of woodcut, the softer side grain is used. Graphs. A graph is an image that represents data symbolically. A graph is used to present complex information and numerical data in a simple, compact format. Bar graphs, line graphs, scatter graphs, and pictographs are some types of graphs. In mathematics and computer science, graph theory is the study of graphs, mathematical structures used to model pairwise relations between objects from a certain collection. A graph in this context refers to a collection of vertices or nodes and a collection of edges that connect pairs of vertices. A graph may be undirected, meaning that there is no distinction between the two vertices associated with each edge, or its edges may be directed from one vertex to another. The graphs studied in graph theory should not be confused with graphs of functions or other kinds of graphs. Graphs are one of the prime objects of study in discrete mathematics. Refer to Glossary of Graph Theory for basic definitions in graph theory. Graphs are among the most ubiquitous models of both natural and human-made structures. They can be used to model many types of relations and process dynamics in physical, biological, and social systems. Many problems of practical interest can be represented by graphs. In computer science, graphs are used to represent networks of communication, data organization, computational devices, the flow of computation, etc. One practical example: the link structure of a website could be represented by a directed graph. The vertices are the web pages available at the website, and a directed edge from page A to page B exists if and only if A contains a link to B. A similar approach can be taken to problems in travel, biology, computer chip design, and many other fields. The development of algorithms to handle graphs is therefore of major interest in computer science. There, the transformation of graphs is often formalized and represented by graph rewrite systems. They are either directly used or properties of the rewrite systems, example confluence, are studied. Complementary to graph transformation systems focusing on rule-based in-memory manipulation of graphs are graph databases geared towards transaction-safe persistent storing and querying of graph-structured data. Graph-theoretic methods in various forms have proven particularly useful in linguistics, since natural language often lends itself well to discrete structure. Traditionally, syntax and compositional semantics follow tree-based structures whose expressive power lies in the principle of compositionality, modeled in hierarchical graph. Within lexical semantics, especially as applied to computers, modeling word meaning is easier when a given word is understood in terms of related words. Semantic networks are therefore important in computational linguistics. Still other methods in phonology, example optimality theory, which uses lattice graphs, and morphology, example finite state morphology using finite state transducers, are common in the analysis of language as a graph. Indeed, the usefulness of this area of mathematics to linguistics has borne organizations such as text graphs, as well as various net projects such as WordNet, VerbNet, and others. Graph theory is also used to study molecules in chemistry and physics. In condensed matter physics, the three-dimensional structure of complicated simulated atomic structures can be studied quantitatively by gathering statistics on graph-theoretic properties related to the topology of the atoms. For example, French-Blau's shortest path, sp rings. In chemistry, a graph makes a natural model for a molecule, where vertices represent atoms and edges bonds. This approach is especially used in computer processing of molecular structures, ranging from chemical editors to database searching. In statistical physics, graphs can represent local connections between interacting parts of a system, as well as the dynamics of a physical process on such systems. Graph theory is also widely used in sociology as a way, for example, to measure actors' prestige or to explore diffusion mechanisms, notably through the use of social network analysis software. Likewise, graph theory is useful in biology and conservation efforts, where a vertex can represent regions where certain species exist or habitats, and the edges represent migration paths or movement between the regions. This information is important for a species. In mathematics, graphs are useful in geometry and certain parts of topology. Example, knot theory. Algebraic graph theory has close links with group theory. A graph structure can be extended by assigning a weight to each edge of the graph. Graphs with weights or weighted graphs are used to represent structures in which pairwise connections have some numerical values. For example, if a graph represents a road network, the weights could represent the length of each road. A digraph with weighted edges in the context of graph theory is called a network. Network analysis have many practical applications. For example, to model and analyze traffic networks, applications of network analysis split broadly into three categories. First, analysis to determine structural properties of a network, such as the distribution of vertex degrees and the diameter of the graph. A vast number of graph measures exist, and the production of useful ones for various domains remains an active area of research. Second, analysis to find a measurable quantity within the network. For example, for a transportation network, the level of vehicular flow within any portion of it. Third, analysis of dynamical properties of networks. So in this episode, we learnt about the illustration and graph. These terms are important for our aesthetical knowledge in general and design field. That is all for today. Thank you and goodbye.